Hello, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the second day of our conference. We had a fantastic day yesterday, great presentations, great speakers, great questions. Really enjoyed being a part of this event, and I hope that you did too. And I would like to take this moment now to give full credit to the organizing group and to their organizations that helped make it happen. National Institute of Health, West Virginia University, Marshall University, Tech Connect West Virginia, and the Accelerator Network. Really fantastic event so far. I have received several emails from participants with additional questions. I'm sure that some of my colleagues as well. So that was, great opportunity to engage. So we are now in our second day, and we had to make some changes with their lineup for today, as you know that we had a panel with successful strategists for startups that went and got SBIR funding in the past. We'll get that panel early today due to conflict for one of our presenters today. That, as you know, on occasion life happens, and we all have certain things that we need to take care of. So we are very grateful to our presenters that they're willing to go ahead and change their order of presentation. So we'll have that panel first today before the presentations from some of their program officers, first from NIH, and at the end it will be NSF. Today I would like to start with this wonderful panel and make an introduction for their moderator for that panel. We're very grateful to Kwame Ulmer, who is serving as entrepreneur in residence in the NHLBI Innovation Office. Kwame is also serving as a principal of his own entity called Ulmer Ventures, which is a regulatory strategy consulting firm. And he is a venture partner at Wavemaker 360 Health, which is a member of Tech Coast Angels in Los Angeles. It's the world's largest angel investing network. He is also a member of the steering committee for Scale Health. So he has a lot of hats to wear. And one of the most interesting hats that he is wearing right now, he is a founder of MedTech Color. It's a great organization that is targeting, aiming to improve equity and diversity and inclusion in MedTech industry. Great effort, really, really very important. Kwame earned his bachelor's in physics from Lincoln University in Pennsylvania, and his master's degree in materials engineering and MBA are from the University of Virginia. And he would introduce the rest of his panel, and we have fantastic companies, presenters in that panel that I had a privilege to work with some of them in the past, and others are new to me, so I'm looking forward to hearing that session.
Thank you so much, Eugene. So as you probably just heard, Kwame is a very busy man. So busy, in fact, that he's running behind, and you all are going to have to deal with me for a little bit. So I'm really excited to introduce this round of successful awardees with you all. In my role as a program officer at the NHLBI, one of the most common things that that I get asked as a PO is, where do I hear from people who have been successful in applying for an SBIR? So this is a really great opportunity to kind of hear how they have dealt with the process, how they've dealt with being able to, revise applications. But I wanted to introduce to you our first speaker. So our first speaker, Dr. Dave Hill, is a professor in the Department of Pathology and Laboratory Medicine at the Medical University of South Carolina. His research is strongly focused on clinical translation related to aging, on tissue repair, and on epigenetic regulation of cytokine and novel signaling pathways that affect skeletal stem cells, immune cells, and cancer biology, in part via regulating differentiation, cell death, senescence, and survival pathways. Dr. Hill also serves as the Executive VP and CSO of Spherophil LLC, which focuses on transitioning novel Department of Energy developed porous walled hollow glass microsphere technologies that are created for energy and defense purposes into commercialized biomedical uses. So Dr. Hill, if you wouldn't mind, would you be able to provide us a really quick 60-second bio about yourself and your company?
Well, thank you. First, I want to really thank the organizers for inviting me. This has really been an exciting and I think really excellent program, and I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of it as we go along here. But I have to admit, both I and our company are really newbies to all this. So this is our first award that we just received literally in May, and the grant started June 1st. So I'll give you my experiences here. Our company, Spherophil, as you kind of outlined, is focused on a novel sustained drug delivery platform technology, where the drug cargo is in a protected environment until it's released. And the technology is based on these ceramic microspheres that are about a third the diameter of a human hair and are hollow with a very large internal cargo capacity. And then there's a thin outer shell that's nanoporous that we can gate to control in a programmed way the release of the cargo materials. Our team includes a material scientist, a cancer ENT clinical scientist, surgeon, and myself, a biomedical researcher. The technology was invented by one of our founders, George Wicks, when he was at the Department of Energy. And we're basically repurposing a mature technology that was developed for defense and energy needs into a biomedical technology. And right now we're focused on how we can use this for drug delivery, but there's other ways we can use this technology. So we're looking at an area in the pharmaceutical industry where there's a great need for the controlled release in a sustained way of difficult to deliver drugs. And that's what we're focused on as a company. And as I said, we just received funding for our phase 1 STTR from the NSF, and we're gearing up right now to do the work and planning for phase 2 already. So I'll stop there with the introduction.
Great. Thank you so much for providing that intro, Dr. Hill. So I have a question for you, and this is something that, as I mentioned, it comes up a lot with the applicants that I talk to, because a lot of them are faculty members who have had experience writing R01 and other research project grants, but they're not as experienced in writing small business grants. So my question for you is, what is the difference, or what should you consider doing differently when you are submitting a small business grant proposal versus when you are writing an R01 or another research project grant?
Well, it really was the hardest thing for us. And there are two areas. One was to think about how to think about the science. And the second was this whole concept of commercialization. So initially, you really need the science to be there. But the goals for each aim in the grant that you're writing need to be very concrete milestones that are go, no-go decisions. You have to either show support or disprove that your approach is feasible. They need to be clearly and logically structured around the data and around that idea. But we have to really shift, and this was so difficult for us, from the standard R01 type aims and outcomes and their interpretation, and where there can be ambiguity and alternatives that are centered around biological mechanisms. And we're having to really now demonstrate the identification of the risks in moving our technology towards commercialization and how we're going to de-risk that technology for potential customers. So it's a totally different mindset. And this really was difficult for us. And we had to recognize that the overarching goal is to develop a product, identify customers, this whole concept of customer discovery, and even more importantly, to identify their unmet needs. These are the pain points that we learned to call them. And we had to show that we had a business plan for commercialization of a product, including an understanding of where and when we would need funding to reach our goals. And the commercialization, again, was the hardest things for us. And members of our team actually had initially a lot of pushback on this because it was so foreign. And they would insist that the science is the most important part, the novelty of what we're doing. However, we were really fortunate that the university's tech transfer office understood this, and they teamed up with us to help us. And one of the things they did is to put us in touch with Eugene and his NIH-supported Accelerator Health SBIR program. And I know this really might come across as a commercial, but there are, in addition to Eugene's company, a lot of other resources that are out there, and this conference has been highlighting some of that. But it was key to our understanding of what we needed to do and how we needed to think about what was important in pivoting our approach. And I have to say that the saving grace really was Eugene's understanding of NSF and NIH and what they're wanting, and then being able to translate that to us and to overcome our resistance to this. And I gotta say, he was brutally honest with us, which is a great thing if you're working with somebody, that they're very, very honest, but he was honest in a nice way. And he didn't sugarcoat the inadequacies of our proposal. We had focused on, in response, we ended up focusing on customer discovery, their pain points, how the technology was going to address their problems. And we had to do deep dives in the literature to understand what customer needs were. And so customer discovery is still something we struggle with, but it's a huge thing to do. And we reached out to industry representatives, but it's really difficult doing cold calls. We had to work with people who would help link us up to the folks in the pharmaceutical industry in particular, and also in areas of business and further support. And so we also had to work around the idea of value proposition, and that this is critical need. And so we had to be really humble in thinking about our company and thinking about competition, and to demonstrate how our product would stand out in solving these industrial pain points in a better or less expensive way, and that would actually be attractive to a customer. So again, this is a really hard shift, and having guidance really helps a lot. And it was very humbling but instructive, and we were successful on our first go round. So I'll end there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Hill. And these were all excellent points you made, and not just about the value of using entrepreneurial resources that are available, that are funded by the NIH, such as the Accelerator Network, but it really is true that so many investigators have the tools and the technology there. It's just really knowing how to use them. So thank you so much for touching on that. So without further ado, our real moderator is actually here, Mr. Kwame Omer, and I will leave it to him to introduce our next speaker. Kwame?
Well, thank you so much, Stephanie. And thank you for your patience as we go through this conversation. And the next question is for Lori Hazelhurst. Lori, thanks again for taking the time to speak with us. And the question for you is, did you get funded after your first application? If not, what would your advice be regarding submitting a revised application?
All right, fantastic question. So none of my grants get funded the first time around, I can humbly say. So what was really important was to think about reviewers' comments, and then construct a response to those reviewer comments of what you think those critiques were. And I think what has been very helpful for us in the STTR SBI program is to have a very close relationship with the program officer. So there are times when they're actually on the call during your review of your application. And that was, they can give you insight of reading in between the lines. So I think, that is only helpful if you spend the time on the front end trying to craft what you think are the most critical critiques or the most critical points that were score driving, and then respond to those on the front end. And then you can have a very valuable discussion with your program officer. They have a lot of insight to the review process. And I think there's a chat, I know. I can give a little introduction to myself and the company as well. So I am a professor of pharmaceutical sciences at West Virginia University, and I'm also the associate cancer center director out of WVU for basic science. Our journey, I can introduce our company. So our journey with the company at Modulation Therapeutics is the company that I'm representing. I'm a co-founder and also the acting CEO of the company. I co-founded it, so I'm a cancer pharmacologist. I co-founded with a peptide chemist, and some of our first technologies had peptide chemistry in the molecule, in the composition of matter. So I would say on the front end, our experience with merging together two different disciplines was very important to our success. Our pipeline currently consists of 3 assets that have all been funded by phase 2 awards. And the first asset is a cyclic peptide that targets resistant cancer. So my background in pharmacology was really to think about targets that were going to be active in the context of drug-resistant disease. The second asset is a targeted radiotherapeutic, which is really gaining some traction with investors and pharma. And we are really pleased to say that we submitted our IND for that application and responding to the FDA on that right now. So that's really our first valuation point, is the submission of the IND and getting those FDA responses back that we can now talk to investors about, which has been really helpful. The third asset is targets SCD1, and we have collaborated with Mayo, Florida, and we have a license for that. And the fourth one that we're doing a feasibility study through a phase 1 application with Werner Geldenhuis out of WVU is an agent that targets stroke. So our team consists of we're a small team. We do have wet bench space within the Cancer Institute, and you can let me know when I'm going too long here. Our team consists of myself and the other co-founder, Mark McLaughlin. We have rotated through some business partners, and we've settled with my brother, who is a serial entrepreneur, and that has been very effective for us. Mark and I are coming both from the science background to really focus us and think about things like Gantt charts that, typically in academia, we're like, well, but we might have another idea over here and go sideways. So really focus us on the valuation points of what is going to de-risk the program and what our investors going to want to see. So it took us a while to get out of our discovery hat and into the commercialization valuation. I think we all are aligned and share the common goal of trying to transition them to the clinic. So that's really a fantastic thing about a startup company, is that you're aligned with a common goal to work towards something. And I'll stop there.
Lori, that was wonderful. So what I'll do is say a bit about the founder or the principal or the company coming up for the rest of the conversation. And the next question is going to go to Ignacio Pino. Ignacio has a really fascinating company. I'll read a little bit about his company and then ask his question. It's a biotech company positioned to revolutionize target-specific mining of the adaptive immune system for robust biomarker discovery and for the rapid, efficient development of next-gen human protein verified ultra-specific monoclonal antibodies for efficient multiplex assay development and therapy. Quite a mouthful, and I'm sure you'll get into some of the details of your company, Ignacio. And the question is, how did you decide which agency small business program to target first?
Hi, yes, can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So, yeah, well, I mean, I guess we learned by entering into some of these support programs early in the game. We tapped into that, and we learned that to scan through the various agencies. This is almost every agency has in the government participates in the SBIR STTR program. Obviously, in our field, we're in the biomedical sciences, so we typically then home into areas that either fall under the NIH or the NSF, and we learned from these advisor groups that it was very important to make a quick once you identify a program where you think you fit, right, that has a you can read about it, you say, okay, maybe our technology is appealing to these agency, and under that agency maybe an institute, then we would go ahead and try to make a connection with the like Lori was saying, make a connection with the potential program officer that you will be working forward. I mean, at that point you're meeting many program officers, and just ask them, make a small short presentation of what your plan is, what your goal is with your SBIR discovery, and where that's going to lead you, and what's the end product out of that, who's the customer, kind of a small elevator pitch, if you will. And typically, that would, they're super helpful. So, they will go ahead and tell you, yeah, that would fall under the scope that, our agency has decided is important for our next round of funding. So then you kind of get a sense of who may be interested. That could be, in our case, NSF, they typically look at more the technology side, not necessarily interested in the disease aspect of that you may be, let's say, improving diagnosis, therapy, or research tools for. On the other hand, NIH then typically would be interested in both, just the technology side, and also what's really the improvement that you're bringing to the field for that particular in that particular project. So I think making that early connection, and then really reading through all the programs, and making prejudgment of which one sounds like a fit, and then confirming that through a quick interview is the best way.
That's wonderful. That's a great rubric to have multiple touch points to get to the right program. And thank you so much for that, Ignacio.
Thank you.
Brett has been so kind enough to join us as well. I'll share a little bit of a really cool article I read about Brett's company and share a quote. And the quote is, the Louisville-based company has been researching the sea creatures to figure out how they can first dehydrate red blood cells and then rehydrate them for later use in blood transfusions. The company's goal is to extend the life of human blood, which can only be used for 42 days after it is harvested in the US, 35 days in Europe, and can only be stored in high-tech refrigerators. So really groundbreaking work, Brett. We have a question for you. And I'm curious, how have you balanced your academic and professional, your entrepreneurial, I should say, activities?
That's a really great question, and one that I think I still ask people for help with, but I'll give what I've learned up to this point. So when I first started, this was actually very related to my dissertation research with Artemia franciscana, the sea monkey that gave us the Trehalose insights that we use for our red blood cells. And so the first advice I'd give is to immediately contact, your conflict of interest office and discuss with them what the necessary steps are to continue working on this entrepreneurial work in addition to your research, especially if your funded research, your government-funded research correlates to what you're spinning off into a company or in an entrepreneurial endeavor. In my case, that meant that anything I did regarding freeze-drying blood could not be applied in any way to my dissertation topic or to my defense. So I had to run secondary research on proteins we weren't using, and then when I worked on blood research, like I did through a Partnership for Innovation grant, I had to put it off onto another timesheet. Totally different lab notebooks for each kinds of projects, totally different times in the lab, different resources. Very strictly, we were trying to keep things as separate as possible. And then I just set aside different times. So for a while, I was working with Eugene at Accelerate Health, and I was learning about how to become an entrepreneur and how to change from the thought process of discovery to de-risking a technology. I would spend Fridays going to an accelerator talking to them. So my university hours became Sunday through Thursday, and then Friday and Saturday were time off that I would then spend on entrepreneurial research and study. And this ultimately culminated in developing a skill where it's not perfect, but I switched between, Brett, the PhD candidate, and Brett, the co-founder of Desacorp, where I very clearly, at least for me, I try and make sure there's a clear distinction. So when we discuss the license of our technology for the company, I wasn't involved in those talks because on paper, I'm an agent of the University of Louisville, but I'm also not necessarily the best agent because I'm part of the company. So I more or less took a step back. All the other co-founders from the university took a step back, and we designated a person who was an employee who was not relevant to the university at all. They were the one who actually did all the negotiating so that we couldn't contaminate that in either direction, either to get more favorable terms for the university or for the company. So yeah, I think it's just at the very beginning, get advice from your university, and then from there, try and set some very firm guidelines for yourself of what you believe you can and cannot adhere to, and keep your interests aligned with your university and your company.
Brett, that was perfectly laid out. And again, my big takeaway was clear guardrails so that your academic life is here and all the ethics have been figured out. So your entrepreneurial activities are separate bucket of work. Thank you so much. And we're going to have time for a group conversation. But before that, Sharon Ballard will join us. I'll share a bit about Sharon's company. She's the CEO of New Shores Biosciences. New Shores Biosciences, New Shores, was founded in 2014, and it is formed to commercialize patented bone and tissue regeneration technologies developed at the University of Arkansas at Little Rock. And she has raised over $9 million in grant research to date. Thanks again, Sharon, for joining us. And the question is your company an academic spinout? If so, please describe your experience working with your institution's tech transfer office.
Thank you very much, Kwame, and thank you for inviting me to participate in this program. We are a university spin-out, and we have had good fortune working with our University Tech Transfer Office. The situation with New Shores is that it's a global licensee for about 20 patents from the university. The company was founded by Dr. Alex Biris, who is the Director and Chief Scientist of the University of Arkansas Little Rock Center for Integrative Nanotechnology Sciences, but he's also a founder and CTO at New Shores. I am his CEO. The relationship with the university is a bit unique. I've taught entrepreneurship programs and been a serial entrepreneur globally. And this particular relationship with a startup is unique in that University of Arkansas Little Rock is a very, I would say, friendly licensor. They are very patient with us. We do have milestones to deliver, commercialization milestones to deliver, but they are very patient when those have to be adjusted or slid. In some ways we're ahead, in some ways we're behind, obviously with technology development, and particularly for regulatory products. One of the challenges of being a licensee is that we don't have the intimate knowledge of the IP, with 20 patents. How do we mature them as a small company? And so the technology transfer from academia to commerce is a challenge in that our CTO is not full-time here. And so our scientists and engineers must engage with those inventors in a much more hands-on way. We had to find a way to do that. And like the previous speaker spoke of, you really have to keep the, say, accounting and IP lines very crisply defined. So how do we do that? Well, we came up with a collaborative research agreement to facilitate technology transfer. And it defines through exhibits by statement of work who pays for what and what the scopes of work and what the deliverables are and what the schedules are. And those are for each licensed IP so that we can build a bridge between academia and our scientific team, getting the help from the university licensor, the know-how that's needed to commercialize it. In addition, that there's the other benefit of this licensee licensor relationship, and that's the source of human resources. In many cases, we have graduate and academic students that work at New Shores part-time, and then they decide whether they want to join us full-time. And that has been, we have a pipeline of those human resources now. We have a facilities and business use agreement. Remember that our scientists that we bring on board here have knowledge of how to work the instruments. There's, you know, millions of dollars worth of instruments. They can, in some cases, maintain their certification for those instrument usage, go back and use them under funded services. We've learned how to use the core services at the university. Again, under funding from our grants, we can actually pay the university for those services or to perform them ourselves under that facilities and business use agreement. And then we've also had subawards both ways. We've subawarded to them. They've actually subawarded to New Shores. So how we do this tech transfer and maturing these IP going forward, we had to come up with some, what I would say is some maybe innovative ways to collaborate.
Sharon, that's fascinating. And you mentioned that you're a serial entrepreneur, and we're going to bring the whole group back. Nick and turn their videos on for a group conversation. But let me double click on kind of the complexity of what you said. Is this something that you can read in a book? Did you have a community of entrepreneurs to advise you? Did you have a friendly person at the university to help you think through all these nuances? How has your journey been in this regard of IP and tech transfer, working with tech transfer office?
Well, first of all, many of the lessons learned are from mistakes made. So at my age, and I'm a lot older than I hopefully look, I've raised a lot of SBIR money on the order of approaching $30 million through my career, through serial entrepreneurial ventures that I've had. I've coached entrepreneurs across every scientific discipline at 300 universities in 60 countries. So when you have that kind of experience and how universities work, how their tech, it's usually the tech transfer office that hires me to help their faculty think through the commercialization activity. So a lot of it's from mistakes made and lessons learned, both myself as an entrepreneur, but also helping other scientists and engineers.
And that is a great segue to our first question, and you touched on it, but this is for anyone who feels energy around responding to this. What entrepreneur programs and or resources have been helpful for your company's growth? And Dr. Hill, I think you touched on it, but others, what's really helped you a lot in terms of programs or resources?
So I can say our company participated both in I-Corps, and that was very interesting to us. It was a lot of work, but we learned a lot through that process about who our real customers were and interviewing what the pain points were and thinking about that. My favorite story from that experience was when we were lined up as new companies and asked who we thought our customer was. We kind of all raised our hand and said it was pharma. And so we were dead wrong on that, you know, it's really the user, the patients, and the clinicians. And then we also went through the commercialization assistance program, and that really helped us think about how to hone our decks, and as well as some networking opportunities. So we have really engaged in all of, not all, but you know, I think they're excellent resources that NIH helps faculty-based startup companies kind of transition over to think about commercialization. So they're fantastic.
Do others have a response of a program that they found helpful, an accelerator, an incubator? Any other comments on that?
I guess at risk of like Dr. Hill said, sound like a commercial. I utilized Accelerate Health out in Louisville, and I know their accelerators like them. I had just finished the local I-Corps, and then I sort of went into the boot camp for Accelerate Health, and they were really helpful for learning how to take what I learned from the customer discovery component of I-Corps and then convert that into actual useful information to present to future investors, or how to frame my discoveries in ways that fit the business model canvas a little better. And then the National I-Corps program was exceptionally helpful as well. I think that I ended up doing those in sequence. So when Launch It, then a year later I did Accelerate Health, and then a month later I did the National I-Corps. So in the end, those all worked out very, I want to say synergistically, there's a better word for it, complementarily. And I think besides that, there were some local events held through Kentucky PAC, which is an organization that helps businesses recognize federal funding opportunities and such. So there were also state-driven local seminars on SBIR, writing and managing a startup company, or what legal things you need to accomplish before you're considered viable for an SBIR. Those were all very helpful as well.
You know, this is great. You know, I am based in Los Angeles, but I have the good fortune to work with companies all over the country. And one key takeaway from these comments is you can bloom where you're planted. There's an ecosystem that you can tap into no matter where you are in the country. And it sounds like there's some really great accelerators and organizations that you've tapped into. So thank you all for that comment. The next question, it's probably a double click on the comments earlier made. It's about building relationship with your program officer. What has been helpful? What advice would you give to people to systematically develop a relationship with that program officer and nurture a relationship? And anyone can take this one.
Well, I'd like to comment on what has been useful for me through the years of getting SBIRs. What I found is, you know, these are very busy people. In the early days, it wasn't a career choice by the SBIR program managers, but now it is. They actually have passion for and choose to play with us. And so I think that needs to be recognized by the entrepreneurs. Second, they're really busy. NIH, the second largest agency of SBIR, they get 45 to 60,000 SBIR proposals a year. So, you know, just look at the sheer volume that they deal with, and they're hearing from us all day long. So how can we make it easy for them to give us the response that we need? So for me, I always like to put a very simple concept write-up. I limit it to about 200 words. It's basically for 6 months and, you know, 250,000 or whatever the number is. I'll prove the feasibility of X. X needs to be defined. I mean, what's a good answer? You should know what that is. What is a feasibility proof? It's got to be very well defined. Then what are the research questions to answer that X? And then what's the impact to the world if I'm successful proving X? So I dump that 200 words into an email. And I tend to get feedback very quickly and almost always get a request for a phone call.
And you know, maybe anyone can add to this, but let me ask a kind of an open question. Are there kind of basic pieces of collateral that as an early stage CEO you use time and time again? Sharon, you hit on one, you know, a short email write-up for that, you know, program manager. Is there a short email write-up for a potential funder? Does anyone want to jump in like, hey, these are kind of the basics you're going to use time and time again in this journey? I'm going a little bit off script here. So yeah, I think I heard the board email, I heard the deck. Anything else that early stage CEOs just, look, you need to have it at your fingertips?
I think one thing we learned along the way is to accept what you don't know, and that you're a small team, And so for what's been really helpful for us is to reach out to consultants because we can't exactly have them on our payroll. So developing those consultants around the regulatory, around the toxicology, the manufacturing has been really helpful.
I want to add something. I mean, along those same lines, you know, probably through consultants at the early stages, eventually getting people in your team to do it, but having a good grasp of managing your funds, especially following the rules of the program when you're, you know, mostly funded by that, you know, source of revenue, you know, money is very important, and that gives you the discipline to, I think, teaches you that discipline to be very on target with your projections and so forth, and you know, it carries over when you start to grow. So I think it's never too early to start consulting with the, you know, accountant to keep your books right.
That's great. And I am also seeing that we're getting questions answered in the chat. So I think that's getting taken care of electronically. We have a couple more questions for our conversation. What is the one thing you wish you had known before applying to an SBIR STTR grant?
I guess I can answer. I know what's hit us the most. I think that the thing that I wish I knew the most, it ended up not being an issue because I caught it before it was too late. But there are a lot of different things you need to register for before you submit an SBIR. You need to get your SAM, System Award Management, SBA certification. You need to get your cage number, your DUNS, and all that stuff. These are things that are more involved with incorporating a company. But then making yourself eligible for federal funds, it's something that I think I didn't think about as I was writing grants at university, which handled all of these things. So the F&A line, now you're in charge of managing the F&A line. So I think that knowing that maybe a month or two earlier would have given me much less of a heart attack, as I saw the DUNS number can take anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. And I was hoping I'd already written my NSF submission. So getting that done, knowing to do that stuff and getting it done early would have been helpful. Although it ended up not being a barrier in the end because everyone on the other side knew what they were doing, were very, very easy to work with and quick.
Any other comments on that one thing?
One of the things I think I learned, but it took time, was that the link between good accounting and time recording and dollar recording and the strength of your intellectual property, and that the SBIR program allows for a new form of intellectual property called SBIR data rights, that the government participates in helping you protect if you do it the right way. It is a very powerful new IP that I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't recognize. The way that you make your SBIR data be valuable, and also other IP like traditional trade secrets or patents. And it's a very strategic decision to make whether it's a patent or a trade secret also. There is also a fourth kind of intellectual property called restricted or trade secret data that's restricted to, that's created accounting wise under your investor money, not SBIR money. And so it has even more strong IP value than SBIR trade secret data. I think there's a IP and accounting linkage that a lot of folks don't realize how subtle that is and how important it is. And in the case of where you want to sell to the government, in our case, DoD may be a customer of our biomedical solutions. How we are able to leverage that is directly related to the protections allowed under SBIR versus paying for it through our investors who have paid for funding. So separating accounting wise, what you pay for actually links directly to your intellectual property.
Fascinating. Well, we've really had a wonderful in my mind, set of questions prepared. There have been some questions that come in through the chat. Our conversation is coming to an end. We do have time if there's a question or two from the chat. But in the interim, I would like to conclude by asking if any of the panelists have something they want to share before we sign off and turn it back over to Arian.
Well, I just want to say that every program that's available, that's here to support small business, you should scout it, look at it, see if it's for you. I mean, they're really helpful, especially when you're totally naive and you're starting. They really get you in the right track. I just, never be shy of trying any program that's available in your state or area.
Great. And Connie asks, where can I find out more? Where can I read about SBIR data rights? And perhaps we can send a resource to Connie afterwards. Well, I'm going to turn it over to Arian, and again, thank the panelists for their time and their insights. It's been a real joy to speak with you. Arian, thank you again for the opportunity to moderate. We're going to transition to the next session if you are ready, and you are.
Yeah.
Thanks,
thank you. Thank you so much, Kwame, for moderating, and for the panelists, thank you all so much. I know I personally really appreciated and enjoyed hearing all of your perspectives and answers, and I'm sure our attendees did as well. So thank you so much. So for the next section for today, I'm going to turn it back over to Stephanie Davis, and she is going to introduce our next round of speakers from the NIH. So Stephanie, whenever you are ready.
Thank you so much, Arian. Thank you again for moderating, and thank you so much to our panelists for sharing all of your insight. I know that is all really helpful advice, and I hope that those in attendance take it to heart, because it really is a learning process, but being able to kind of learn from people who have blazed that trail before you is absolutely crucial. So I wanted to take this moment to introduce you all to my colleague at the National Institute for Neurological Disorders and Stroke. So Dr. Emily Caporello is the program director of the Small Business Program in the Division of Translational Research at NINDS. Previously, she served as a scientific project manager in the NINDS Small Business Program. Prior to joining NINDS, she was the vice president of research and a co-founder of MindX Corporation, a small business focused on brain-computer interface technology. Dr. Caporello previously worked as a senior neuroscience at the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, or DARPA, and co-founded CleverPet, a small business focused on automated behavioral training technology. She received her PhD in neuroscience from the University of California, San Diego, and now she is here to tell you all about the funding opportunities available at NINDS.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. I really appreciate that introduction. As you may have heard from yesterday, overall, the NIH provides over $1 billion annually specific to small businesses through SBIR and STTR funding. And that is administered through our separate 27 institutes and centers. So each institute at NIH and center has its own small business program with unique aspects. And so today I'm going to talk to you about those unique aspects at NINDS, the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke. Go ahead, Stephanie, to the next slide. Thank you for driving. So at NINDS, our primary area of interest under our mission are neurological disorders and the brain. This includes neurological disorders including stroke, epilepsy, neurodegenerative disorders, spinal cord injury, traumatic brain injury, and many neurogenetic disorders. There are hundreds of disorders in total that are under our mission. But there are a number of institutes at NIH that do cover some of these areas and neuroscience more broadly. So our first recommendation to anyone seeking funding in the neuroscience space is to reach out to the institute that you think is most aligned with your project and get that direction to the correct institute or center that their mission best aligns with your project, so that you can make sure you're receiving the correct guidance for small business funding from that institute. Now at NINDS, we do have an overall annual SBIR and STTR budget of about 70 million, which supports roughly 200 active projects to small businesses in this space. Next slide, please. And each institute and center at NIH does have their own policies regarding budget and timeline for SBIR awards. At NINDS, we do have a number of approved budget waiver topics that we allow applicants who have projects fitting into those topics request budgets that exceed the hard caps set by the Small Business Administration. Those hard caps for phase 1 are about 256K in total cost, and for phase 2 are about 1.7 million in total cost. At NINDS, we allow projects that fit within the budget waiver topics to exceed those hard caps and propose up to 700K in total cost for phase 1, with no more than 500K total cost per year. And in phase 2, we allow budgets up to 3 million in total cost with no more than 1.5 million per year. Our phase 1s can be anywhere from 6 months to 24 months in duration, and phase 2 can be anywhere from 2 to 3 years in duration. That link at the bottom will link you to all this information. It's all publicly available. You can see the waivers, you can see our budget guidance, and of course you can reach out to us if you're not sure if your project fits into appropriate budget waiver topics. Next slide, please. At NINDS, the majority of our SBIR and STTR applications come in through the Omnibus funding opportunity announcement. This is for any investigator-initiated research projects that fit into the mission of HHS. And from there, anything that falls into our mission will come to us, and that is where we get the majority of our applications from. NINDS does not support clinical trials through the Omnibus, but we do support clinical trials for SBIR and STTR through dedicated NINDS funding opportunities. So if you are doing a clinical trial and you think you may be under the mission space of NINDS, very important to reach out to us so we can give you the appropriate guidance and direct you to the right funding opportunity. We do have a handful of funding opportunities that we participate in that are more limited in scope, that are associated with trans NIH programs, including the BRAIN Initiative, the HEAL Initiative, and AD/AD-RD. So if you are working in the space of research tools, pain management, or Alzheimer's disease and Alzheimer's disease-related dementia, these may be of interest to you. And NINDS also participates in some later stage funding opportunities, including phase 2B and the commercialization readiness pilot. I'm not going to go into depth in these today, but these are available for companies that have received phase 2 funding and are seeking additional support for later stage development. And next slide, please. At NINDS, we also have a number of small business specific funding opportunities through the cooperative agreement mechanism that fit into programs run outside of small business, but through the translational research and clinical research programs that are part of the larger NINDS extramural space. So here's just a map of all the different types of development programs we have in the translational and clinical space at NINDS. And in the next slide, you will see highlighted in yellow. We'll go ahead to next slide, Stephanie, when you get a chance. Thank you. In yellow are the programs that have small business specific tracks. So you can apply for cooperative agreement mechanisms and access the small business set aside funding while still being part of these programs. And I'll go through these in the next slide, please. So specifically, if you're working in the space of device development, small molecule development, biomarker development, or biologics development, and you're at a sort of pre-IND transitioning to early clinical stage, you may be at the appropriate time point to participate in cooperative agreement funding opportunities under the Division of Translational Research. If you are at a clinical trial stage, you may be able to utilize small business funding to access NINDS clinical trial networks, including NeuroNext and StrokeNet. The advantages of these cooperative agreement mechanisms is that they not only have often larger budgets associated with them, but they come with a lot more resources in the form of CRO support to help conduct some of that research, as well as consultants and experts, and a little bit more higher touch points to help you be successful in your research and development. So it can really help augment the R&D capabilities of your small business. Most of these opportunities do not have standard SBIR and STTR deadlines. And so if you're interested at all, we recommend initiating those conversations with the program staff associated so that we can make sure to give you all the relevant information for those programs. Next slide, please. You may have heard a little bit about some of the programs available to applicants yesterday, but I wanted to, just in case you haven't, let you know that we do participate at NINDS in the Applicant Assistance Program. This program allows new applicants and new businesses to NIH, so businesses that have not been funded before by the NIH and the SBIR, STTR programs, to get up to 10 weeks of coaching to develop a phase 1 application. It's a wonderful program. I highly recommend it to any companies who are new to NIH SBIR funding. And you can learn more on this page or by, of course, contacting us to see if you would be eligible. There's also a number of online resources that we guide new applicants to. These include the overall NIH SBIR website, which has a lot of helpful information on the policy, the timelines. There's a wonderful FAQ page, which is incredibly helpful. There's access to sample applications. We also, on our website, the NINDS Small Business website, do have recordings of application webinars where we kind of walk through some of the big FAQs for NINDS, which I highly advise taking a look at if you do fall in the NINDS mission. And then, of course, we do recommend you reach out to us. The right time to reach out to us is when you have that project description ready, that draft-specific aims page, which will really help us to direct you to the right program staff, direct you to the right funding opportunity, and help you make sure that you're strategizing correctly for your submission. And we do ask you to anticipate, especially when we get close to those submission dates, that it may take up to a month to get on our calendars because of the amount of outreach. So be prepared early. We recommend reaching out over a month before the application deadline with your aims page, and then we're happy to talk with you and give you guidance. And I will end there. I know we don't have time for questions today, but I am happy to provide any answers in the Q&A chat to anything on the NINDS funding side. Thank you very much, Stephanie. Oh, I missed my last slide there. I can go next since I have a minute, Stephanie, if you don't mind. So phase, we also do provide support to our funded companies. I apologize for missing this slide, Stephanie. We participate in the I-Corps and C3I programs and the TABA Needs Assessment Program. These are opportunities to help grow the company and support the company, and they are funded by NIH. It does not cost anything to the company to participate in these programs. And then for all companies, NINDS does participate in supplements to promote diversity. We also help connect our awardees with innovator support, that's entrepreneurs in residence or regulatory experts. And we do offer technical and business assistance support as well. Happy to answer questions about this as well. Thank you. Sorry, Ilana and Stephanie, for missing that last slide. Thanks so much.
No worries. Everyone, give a big thanks to Dr. Caporello for that lovely presentation. And next up, we have Dr. Ilana Goldberg at the National Institute for Biomedical Imaging and Bioengineering. So Dr. Goldberg actually came to the NIH around the same time as I did, in the fall of 2019, through the AAAS Science and Technology Policy Fellows Program. but now she acts as a program director in the Division of Discovery Science and Technology. She currently has oversight of the bioengineering small business portfolio, as well as the bioengineering technology and research centers. Dr. Goldberg is committed to supporting the development of biomedical technologies that enhance public health. So please give a warm welcome to Dr. Ilana Goldberg.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. I appreciate the introduction. Glad to have joined NIH at the same time as you. So as Stephanie mentioned, I am the program director for our small business initiatives at NIBIB, the National Institute of Biomedical Imaging and Bioengineering. And today I'm going to talk to you about some of the SBIR, STTR initiatives that we have. So next slide, please. So first I want to discuss NIBIB's mission. It is slightly different than the other ICs at NIH in that we are not a disease-specific institute. So your technology, your biomedical solution can treat any type of disease or healthcare problem that is out there. What we look for and what is within our mission is the funding of the initial design and engineering of new technologies. We have technologies in a variety of different portfolios that I'll get into in the next couple of slides. But that's one of the key differences. We're looking for the early stage design and engineering of technologies. They all need to have a clinical application, but it can be focused on any type of disease. And when I say disease agnostic, that doesn't mean that your application has to focus on more than one disease. In fact, it generally comes across better if you choose a specific disease or diagnostic for your platform to focus on. Most of the time, that's a business decision based on whether on what platform, on what community is best for your technology that you're developing out there. So next slide, please. So at NIBIB, we have three main divisions that we divide our portfolios into. First is the division of applied science and technology, and that's our bioimaging division. Research in this portfolio is along any type of imaging application. So we have ultrasound, we've got x-rays, we've got MRIs, nuclear medicine. We look at hardware, we look at software applications, we look at detectors, we look at algorithms, the whole 9 yards in any type of imaging. Our next division is the Division of Discovery Science and Technology. That's our bioengineering division. And in this division, we are looking at different types of engineering platforms, from chemical engineering to robotic systems to synthetic biology. We also have a mathematical modeling and simulation analysis program. And finally, we have our Division of Health Informatics, and that includes artificial intelligence, machine learning type algorithms for disease, connected health, mobile health, and telehealth. We also have a huge point of care technologies portfolio, which fits into our POCTER network, our point of care network, as well as biomedical informatics and image processing. Next slide, please. So how do you figure out if you are a mission fit for NIBIB? I've just told you it's a little bit complicated. So what we really ask for is a specific aims page. And here I'm going to spell out what we're looking for in a specific aims page. The first opening paragraph should really be, what is a biomedical clinical gap that you're trying to solve with your technology? Why does the current technology out there not fill this gap? How can your technology fill this gap, and why is it innovative? And it's very important to have those 4 points up front and center to understand where your technology fits into the scheme of all of the technology that's out there. Then you can include a second paragraph that's your long-term goal, your main objective, and the rationale for why you chose what to do. The other really critical part of your specific aims page are really writing 3 aims. These are 3 goals that 2 or 3 goals that you hope to accomplish during the course of your grant. For NIBIB, these aims should really show how you're going to design and engineer new technology over the course of your grant lifetime. What I tell people is make sure these aims are in line with the budget and the timeline for the specific grant you're applying for. Don't tell us you're going to get all the way through full clinical trials on a phase 1 SBIR grant. We won't believe you. Make it realistic is very important. And then finally, you can have a final paragraph on expected outcomes or the expected impact of your technology. For NIBIB, we ask you submit your AIMS page to our SBIR email, which is listed below on the slide. I say well in advance of submission deadline on this slide, but really what that means is 6 to 8 weeks before the submission deadline that you are trying to make, at least 6 to 8 weeks before the submission deadline you're trying to make. We evaluate all specific aims in-house and get back to you and let you know whether you're a mission fit for NIBIB, or if not, help try to point you to a different government agency or different NIH institute where you may be a better mission fit. If you are a mission fit for NIBIB, then we are able to help you out and do a consulting phone call for your application process. You're also always welcome to ask for a phone call before you submit a specific AIMS page if needed. Next slide, please. So the relevant funding opportunities at NIBIB, we work mostly through the omnibus solicitations that I am sure you've heard a lot about during the course of these 2 days. We participate in both the clinical trial and non-clinical trial solicitations. However, NIBIB does have our own clinical trial NOSI that we put out. Because we only fund certain clinical trials. So we can fund first in humans, we can fund phase 1 clinical trials, but we definitely don't really fund more than the phase 1 clinical trials. For all these PA announcements, you can look at sbir.nih.gov/funding, and the PA numbers will be out there. And really, these are the investigator-initiated grants. So just show us why your technology is in the engineering and design stage and that it has a biomedical application. Next slide, please. And we do have a couple of funding opportunities out now that are specific. So currently we have Note EB 21001, and this is specifically for small businesses who have innovative diagnostic technology for improving outcomes for maternal health. So what we are looking for in this is if you have technology that can identify any type of biomarkers, phenotyping, subtyping that can show that there's greater risk, that there might be greater risk during pregnancy or after pregnancy symptoms to the mother. We are looking for all types of technology, point of care technology, wearable technology, portable technology, especially if you can have technology, that can be available in rural settings, technology that can be used by general practitioners as opposed to OBs in settings where maybe it's harder to find an OB, but can be an early indication that there might be an issue so that the woman can get help faster. We are looking for multi-level interventions. We are looking for interventions that might address some of the racial disparities in maternal mortality and morbidity. This NOSI is currently open. It is not just through NIBIB, but we have 12 different ICs signed on to this NOSI. We all have slightly different mission statements. So if you are at any way involved in the women's healthcare field, or if you have some sort of wearable point of care device that you can re-engineer or redesign towards this application, please take a look at the NOSI and see what we're looking for. And please don't hesitate to contact me or the contact for the IC that you think you would most likely fit into in our NOSI. Next slide, please. We also have just reopened our RADx Tech portfolio. So this is our RADx Tech 2. It is not going to be open for very long. In fact, it closes again on Monday. We have already had a lot of applications for this. But if you are in the coronavirus technology diagnostic space, there are a few clear things that we're currently looking for. So that is innovative, cost-effective, and accessible home and point of care technologies. And there's listed concrete examples on this if you go to the website. And we're also looking for technologies that can significantly advance the variant testing capabilities. Like I said, we have a lot of applications. This closes again on Monday, but if you are at all involved in this field, I encourage you to apply before Monday. Next slide, please. And finally, I know that Dr. Caporello described this a little bit, but at NIBIB, we run the C3I, the Concept to Clinic Commercializing Innovation Program. So I'll just go into a little bit of detail about what it is, but this is a program specifically designed to provide medical innovators with the business framework and the translational tools that they need to take your technology from the lab to the market. This program is custom tailored to your technology and to your company. Should you be accepted, you get assigned a business advisor and a program manager that has expertise in your field. And you go through all the steps from customer validation, customer interviews, figuring out where your niche is through business plan development. So next slide, please. So we do have a couple of different programs involved with this. During the summer months, we run an EC3I program, so an education program. It's aimed at academic investigators or really early startups. It goes through the very initial phases of figuring out how to get your device idea from the lab to the market. So that is doing the customer interviews, doing the validation, and figuring out your niche. And also starting to develop a pitch talk. It is for 10 weeks and it is an all virtual program and was designed to be all virtual even before COVID. Our main program is our 24-week C3I program, Validation Execution Program. So it goes more in detail in the validation niche aspects, but then has a whole execution program, which takes you through FDA licensing and really how to develop a commercialization plan and be competitive. And then finally, we have the C3I acceleration program that is only open to candidates who have completed our regular C3I program and currently only open to NIBIB grantees. But this is a great program, and if you at all fit in, I urge you to apply. We are currently accepting applications for our C3I validation execution program. And there's a website there to look at. Next slide, please. So finally, if you have more information, there's different ways to connect with us. The links on the slide link you to our C3I program, our NIBIB small business program, of course, the seed office that you heard from. NIBIB does have a Twitter handle, so please follow us and please join our listservs. And finally, the last slide, Stephanie, if you want to advance, is just my contact information for you. Please feel free to reach out at any time with questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Goldberg, everybody. Give her a warm imaginary round of applause. So the next speaker that we have today is going to be my colleague at the National Institute for Arthritis and Musculoskeletal and Skin Diseases, Dr. Xibin Wang. So he has been at NIAMS since 2009. And before that, he actually completed his postdoc training also in NIAMS within the cartilage biology and orthopedics branch of the NIAMS intramural program. He received his doctoral degree in nutrition from Penn State University and his bachelor's degree in public health from China Medical University in Shenyang, China. So Dr. Wang, take it away.
Thank you. So next slide, please. So we are the Institute of Arthritis and Musculoskeletal and Skin Diseases. So there are three big areas we support, and one is rheumatic diseases, and we support all kinds of arthritis research: the rheumatoid arthritis, juvenile idiopathic arthritis, Lyme arthritis, and gout, and lupus, and systemic scleroderma, and some other and autoimmune diseases too. So the second big area is the musculoskeletal diseases, and we support osteoporosis study, osteoarthritis, and muscular dystrophy, and tissue engineering product to replace and musculoskeletal tissues, and tendon, ligament, muscle, bone, and also skin, and next category. And we also support and all kinds of orthopedic devices. yesterday somebody asked about the orthopedic implant. Yeah, that's in our mission. So the skin diseases, we support the psoriasis, acne, dermatitis, and wound healing. And we have some overlaps with other institutes. Next slide, please. So, yeah, next. Thank you. And NIAD also support a lot of research on the rheumatic diseases. I think mostly they interested in immunology aspect, but you can ask their contact. So also musculoskeletal diseases, National Institute on Aging, they also support osteoporosis, osteoarthritis, and injury in elderly people. I think there, especially if you're dealing with some aging aspect of the research, NIA will be a good home for the research. And the skin disease, I talk about the wound healing. Actually, wound healing, a lot of institutes support that. And NIDDK support diabetic wounds, and NIGMS support burn wounds, and NIAD and support the infection of the skin. If you're developing a new drug to kill the bacteria, and that would be NIAD. And also some immunology aspect in the inflammation, they may support. And the skin cancer goes to NCI, the National Cancer Institute, also the bone cancer. So next slide, please. I mentioned all these overlap because we are a very small institute. The SBIR set aside, we only have like 16 million. STTR, we have $2.2 million. So this is only a fraction of other big institutes. It's, I know NIAID, they got like 180 million. We are only like 10% of their budget. And so that's why, you know, the overlap, if you know they can support you, maybe it's better to go to some other big institute. In our institute, our program is very competitive. And so if some other institute can support your research, I would prefer you get a bigger chance to get the award rather than stay with us and you get a very good score. It doesn't guarantee you get the award. And so we use a budget cap, and phase 1 is $259K, and phase 2 is $1.73 million. For majority of our awards, we stick with the budget cap because it's very competitive. We want to support as many applications as possible. That's why we stick with the cap. If we allow people go over the cap, we cannot fund even more applications. And so we do have the technical and the business assistant program. We provide phase 1, 6,500 for phase 1, and phase 2 we provide 50K. Next slide, please. So of course we participated in the parent announcement. I didn't list here. And there are some special funding opportunity within our institute. One is we support late translation of the research results from the academic lab to the marketplace. Usually these done by STTR, we issue this special SBIR funding opportunity because we have very limited STTR funds, only $2 million, $2.2 million. So that's why we want to use some SBIR money for the technology transfer if you can do most of the work in the company. So for this funding opportunity, we do allow you go over the cap. This is the only funding opportunity we allow a bigger budget than the hard cap. So phase 1, you can go up to 300K, and phase 2, you can go to $2 million. But for this funding opportunity, the technology must be originated from academic lab. And we also participate in the HEAL initiative and for the preclinical pain management, STTR, SBIR funding opportunity. And also we participate in the administrative supplement to promote diversity. And that one will only give administrative supplement to phase 2 award. And the next is the technology to promote maternal health, and Dr. Ilana Goldberg just talked about it. So in our disease area, we also support any technology to improve the maternal health. Next slide, please. So we also participate in a commercialization readiness program. This is after phase 2 awards. And we do have our own budget limit. And for the general budget is about $1.1 million for 3 years. But our institute, we only provide $400K each year for 3 years. So we also participate in ACOR program. This is run by our colleague from National Cancer Institute. So that's for the phase 1 awardee to get some education about the business aspect or do a market analysis. So in NIAMS, we do not support clinical trials. And also we do not participate in the phase 2B. So that's simply because our budget is so limited, we cannot support more awards. And for the clinical trials, we have a special mechanism, clinical trial mechanism to support it. And but that's from general funds, not from SBIR, STTR funds. Next, please. Okay, yeah, I happen to have these slides, and we recently did an analysis on the success rate. So from 2009 to 2020, the 12 years data, the phase 1 in our institute, we have a success rate about 12%. And phase 2, we have a success rate. If you did a phase 1, then come back for the phase 2. The success rate is for more than 40%. And okay. So the fast track and the direct phase 2 is about a 10%. And the overall is 14%. Next, please. Okay, I think this is my last slide. So, and the products category we support is these 5 big categories: biologics, that's the protein, mRNA, RNA, DNA products, and small molecules, and diagnostic tools, and sometimes imaging tools, and also therapeutic device, including the implants and the tissue engineer product to replace the muscle, bone, and tendon ligaments. I think that's my last slide. I'm sorry I didn't give my contact information. you can find me from the website. Thank you, Stephanie.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Wang. And for those of you who have the program booklet, his email is in there. So if you do want to reach out and ask any questions about the NIAMS Small Business Program, you can find his email there. Okay, so next up, we have my colleague at the National Institute for Diabetes, Digestive and Kidney Diseases, Dr. Danny Gossett. So a little bit about Dr. Gossett. So he is a program director in the Division of Kidney, Urologic, and Hematologic Diseases at NIDDK. His portfolio includes tool and technology development efforts, biomedical imaging, translational research, and research conducted by small businesses in the areas of kidney, urologic, and hematologic diseases. He is the SBIR coordinator for the NIDDK and works on several NIDDK programs, including the Kidney Precision Medicine Project, the Rebuilding a Kidney Consortium, and the Genitourinary Development Molecular Army Project. So without further ado, Dr. Gossett.
Thanks, Stephanie. So I'll provide a brief overview of the NIDDK mission, as well as our SBIR and STTR programs. Next slide, please. So the research mission of the NIDDK is quite broad, and it includes many chronic, common, consequential, and costly diseases, from diabetes to obesity to liver diseases to chronic kidney disease to incontinence. Next slide, please. To address this mission, the NIDDK's extramural research program is organized into 3 scientific divisions. The Division of Diabetes, Endocrinology, and Metabolic Diseases includes type 1 and type 2 diabetes and obesity. The Division of Digestive Diseases and Nutrition covers NASH, IBS, and obesity, for example. And the Division of Kidney, Urologic, and Hematologic Diseases includes chronic and acute kidney disease, many benign urological conditions, and anemias and sickle cell disease. Next slide, please. The SBIR program is integral to what we're trying to accomplish at the NIDDK. As an example, I'll focus on our programs for translational research for therapeutic discovery and development. As you're probably aware, the NIH funds a great deal of research on disease biology and target identification, development of assays and screening through our parent R01 grants, but also our large programs and consortia. And I've selected a few kidney programs here, as these are the areas that I represent. Next slide, please. In the area of therapeutics, we also have programs intended to support some of the subsequent steps, especially chemistry and protein engineering, to develop leads. Next slide, please. And while this is not meant to be prescriptive, and many of our programs are quite flexible, the later stages of preclinical and then clinical development are often supported by our grant programs for small businesses, the SBIR and STTR, or intellectual property might be licensed to industry. Next slide, please. NIDDK's SBIR and STTR program spans a wide range of technology categories. It is often well represented by drug development, including small molecules, proteins, and cell-based technologies. But it varies by disease area. For example, our urology program is significantly weighted toward devices. Next slide, please. Others have already defined the different phases of the program. I just wanted to note here that NIDDK is participating in 2 of the commercialization readiness pilot program funding opportunities as well, but we also fund phase 2Bs at a greater dollar amount. We also currently accept diversity supplements through the parent announcement, and our budget guidance is here, but can also be found in the program descriptions and research topics document that you can access through the omnibus funding opportunity announcements. Next slide, please. You can find the funding opportunities that NIDDK participates in many locations. You can come to the NIDDK website and filter by SBIR and STTR, or you can visit the central NIH website, SBIR website. Specifically, we typically participate in 3 of the 4 omnibus or parent announcements. We only accept clinical trials through the SBIR, not the STTR mechanism. Next slide, please. We have a handful of targeted funding opportunities or requests for applications, RFAs. These are related to our type 1 diabetes program. These RFAs specifically have due dates next calendar year and invite applications focused on glucose control technologies and their integration into open and closed loop hormone replacement systems, as well as the improvement of cell replacement interventions. Next slide. We have expressed interest in applications in a few areas through NOSIs, Notices of Special Interest, here on improving methods to assess body composition in infants and young children, children ages birth through 5 years, as well as development of swallowable smart pills or devices to advance precision nutrition, microbiome, and gastroenterological research. Next slide. We're also interested in innovative approaches to renal replacement therapy, including vascular access and fluid management during dialysis, and technologies to support both support kidney precision medicine research and to translate kidney precision medicine discoveries and technologies. Next slide. And I'll leave you with two messages. One, as I mentioned, our SBIR and STTR programs are integral to our mission. Our SBIR and STTR grantees are often participants in our scientific workshops, such as this one coming up next month. And also, as others have said, contact us early with your draft-specific aims page. And you can find SBIR program officers in our mission areas on our website, or if you recognize that you're within one of the divisions, please feel free to Google the name of the program officer and they'll come right up. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Dr. Gossett. And last but not least, we have Victor Prikhodko, sorry, I can't talk today, representing the Small Business Program at NIDA. So Victor is a scientific business development manager within the NIDA Office of Translational Initiatives and Program Innovations, which supports NIDA and administers a $50 million per year small business fund. Victor previously held positions at ABL, RHT Consulting, and Eris Global. Over the last 6 years, he has helped transform NIDA's SBIR STTR program by working closely with program staff, CEOs, accelerators, and incubators across the US, government agencies, nonprofit organizations, and partners of VC firms. So Victor, take it away.
All right, thank you, Stephanie. Well, thanks everyone for sticking around and listening to all of our presentations. So we structured the last presentation just a little bit different because I really wanted to convey how unique substance use disorder and that specific market is. And as a consequence to that, we have to think about our small business program a little bit differently. Next slide, please. So as most people know, NIDA's mission space is really focused on addiction, and over 20 million people in the United States suffer from addiction. If you or know someone that's directly impacted by addiction, most likely someone within your circle of friends or family does. So it's a very big problem. The opiate epidemic has really put us at the front line in regards to, the Washington Post, New York Times. You really, prior to COVID-19, couldn't pick up a newspaper without realizing the impact that substance use disorder has on our country. Next slide, please. Now, you've heard all the different presentations from other NIHICs. So where is NIDA? Well, NIDA is kind of in the middle in regards to the budget. So we have about $50 million that we give in grants and contracts to small businesses. But what's really interesting to us is that there is a very limited market opportunity in substance use disorder. And there's very little interest in regards to big pharmaceutical companies and device manufacturers. And what this means is that traditionally, when an academic researcher publishes a great paper in regards to cancer, most likely that's where their journey starts. So the creation of knowledge, maybe filing some provisional patents through their technology transfer office, that's enough. There's enough interest from venture capital community, from big pharma to come along, take those discoveries and then start to translate them. For us, that's not the case. So we have to have a much more hands-on approach in regards to translation. And so because of this perceived lack of market opportunity for small businesses, we've really had to kind of stretch ourselves and really become almost like a venture capital firm that's looking for deals. And so by applying this practice, we've really built our own innovator community. We've started to create new market opportunities. And so we fund tools and technologies that are also not just specific for substance use disorder, and that may be the case for a beachhead market for certain companies, but we're also very much interested in platform technologies that could be applied for substance use disorder, because we understand that companies, small businesses, they need different revenues, they need different flows of cash flow in order to be sustainable. Next slide, please. So if we look at why you as a company are likely to fail, so what are the top 10 reasons? Well, the number one is usually companies build something that nobody wants. Number two is you hire poorly, or the executive team that you have in regards to your team doesn't have the necessary expertise, or maybe the culture that you create within the company is insufficient, or there's a lack of focus, so you spread yourself too thin as a company and go after too many beachhead markets. And so for us to help our applicants, our grantees, our companies, we do 5 things within the office. We source, evaluate, help with transactions, we manage our portfolio extremely well, and then we also help on the exiting side of the equation. Next slide, please. And so let's start with sourcing. So for us, when I came into the office, one of the things that I saw was that it's very often for RFAs, RFPs to be published, but there's not always a lot of input in regards to stakeholders that are going to be end users of the products that are being developed or the purchasers. So we routinely do field trips in terms of doing due diligence. So when we try to identify promising areas where investment needs to be made, we've also published a number of notices where we request a request for information, where we're asking various stakeholders, insurance companies, pharmaceutical companies, payers, providers, family members, researchers, what are their problems, and how can the small business address those problems? We worked with nonprofit organizations like Addiction Policy Forum, trying to understand the patient's journey, and then again, what are the gaps in service and how our small business portfolio can address those specific gaps, because if there's a problem to solve, that means that there's a market opportunity for that. And through that work with the nonprofit sector, we also work with the FDA, where we now have had 2 meetings focused on substance use disorder through their patient-focused drug development program, which is an amazing program. If you haven't looked at it, it's quite remarkable. Please take a look at FDA's website. But the focus of this program is for the FDA to listen to patients and their input, and then as a result of that, publish documents, so guidance to industry in regards to what medications or what things FDA is going to consider. And so as a result of this meeting, there have been a number of guidances that FDA has published since then, which again is quite remarkable. Focused on things such as clinical endpoints that would be considered for substance use disorder, novel formulations for things like buprenorphine, which is a medication that can be prescribed for patients with opioid use disorder. And we take all of this in combination with scouting technologies from accelerators, incubators across the country, and we take all of this information and put it in the form of various RFA, RFP topics. So this is the way we source and really identify promising companies to invest in. And 40% of the companies that we funded last year had never applied to SBIR before. So we really are looking for entrepreneurial companies, really good ideas. If you're not a successful biotech, that's okay. That's not our expectation of companies that are going to be disruptive in our field. Next slide, please. And so when I talk about sourcing, I talked about various accelerators and incubators that we routinely visit. Again, we also participate with various government agencies. So 2 years ago, Health and Human Services, for example, had a big opiate hackathon to address the opiate epidemic. J&J has a number of incubators across the country. So we've presented a number of them over the years, again, trying to identify companies, but also inform companies of our program and all the funding opportunities that we have. Next slide, please. And so this is a really good example of a company that we actually pivoted, and we saw the company present at a local accelerator here in the DC area called 1776. And the principal investigator, who's a very talented emergency room physician, she developed this really cool software that would help physicians triage patients after if they didn't have an open bed. And so she found herself as a doctor really spending a lot of time on the phone rather than actually delivering care to patients and doing billable activities. By happenstance, a week prior to, I visited treatment facilities in the Baltimore area. And when talking to the owners of those treatment facilities, one of their pain points that they identified was they were spending a lot of time trying to get patients to another treatment facility or to transition from an inpatient to an outpatient facility to find that open bed. So we approached Nishi, the CEO, and said, you have this amazing platform technology. What do you think about pivoting and testing it in substance use disorder? And so the company ended up submitting a successful fast track application. They partnered with the state of Indiana, and then successfully scaled the software across the country into 8 different states, only then to be acquired by Appriss Health. And we actually provided a little bit of guidance in the acquisition process as well. Next slide, please. So if you are interested in doing research in regards to substance use disorder, whether it's health IT, device diagnostics, or therapeutics, please reach out to us, but also take advantage of all these resources that NIDA as an institute has to help companies and so this ranges from the ability for you to send compounds and to get them screened for free through various animal models for addiction, or getting access to things like fentanyl, methamphetamine, if you're studying electronic cigarettes or doing nicotine research. So we have a lot of supplies that you can get access through our NIDA drug supply program. And we even have help and guidance through our Division of Therapeutic Medical Consequences for regulatory affairs assistance. So there's a lot of resources that you can tackle. So again, why NIDA? So next slide, please. And to be quite frank, as someone that has entered this kind of space, and before I took on the job within the NIH, I'd never heard about National Institute on Drug Abuse. I thought NIDA was the same as NIAD. But when I came to NIDA, one of the things that I really connected with was that there's this really blue ocean strategy when it comes to addiction, drug development, therapeutic development, because a lot of the things that are being done in cancer, in diabetes, you may be the 5th or 6th or 20th company to do them in that specific market, but you may be the first to do it in substance use disorder because that competition isn't as fierce. And so, for example, Pear Therapeutics, who invested in very early on, they were the first company to develop a digital therapeutic and get FDA approval for it. And so there's a lot of really amazing opportunities in regards to being the first to the market and having great success. And Pear, for example, just announced yesterday that they were going to be a publicly traded company via SPAC model at a $1.4 billion valuation. Next slide, please. And so again, we really create a community in regards to the companies that we fund. So we have a very intimate relationship with them so we can make introductions, recommendations. But more importantly, next slide, please, we also nurture this community early on. So we have a number of programs that are specifically intended to target ideas rather than already seeding companies. And this is done through our program that we've launched with Yale's Entrepreneur Institute, which is a boot camp for a week. We also have a challenge price competition where you don't need any registrations. You just send in an email, a 4-page proposal and a short YouTube video, and we select 10 to 15 companies, give them $10,000, and then 6 months of product development mentorship through our office, and then through additional resources that we have in regards to business development. And so the last 2 slides, next slide, please, really is our contact information and our various funding opportunities. Next slide, please, which can be found on our website. So here's all the current funding opportunities that we have. One is focused on mobile health solution to rectify digital inequalities. Another one is focused on leveraging artificial intelligence for substance use disorder drug discovery and development. And then, as you probably noted from other presentations, we're also very much a driver for the HEAL initiative, focused on ending the opiate epidemic, the opiate crisis. And so if you're interested in reaching out to us, next slide, please do reach out. So here's all the contact information of our program officers. NCI and NIDA are the only two institutes, I believe, that are managing their entire portfolio under one office, under one division. So these are the individuals who are going to be working with you the entire process, from you having a really good idea all the way to getting funding, but then also getting access to all of these additional resources that I've outlined in the presentation. So with that, thank you everyone so much for your time. And if you have any follow-up questions, please email me or someone from our office.
Thank you so much, Victor. That was really, really helpful. So I wanted to let everybody know, first of all, give a big imaginary round of applause to all of our NIH presenters today. We are running a little bit behind, so if it's okay with everyone else, I'm giving us a 10-minute break. So if everyone could please come back here by 1:55. You don't want to miss this next presentation. We have a really great show in for you with Dr. Jesus Soriano, who's a program director at the NSF's SBIR and Partnerships for Innovation programs. So I will see everybody back here at 1:55.
Welcome back. We're now in for a great treat. I would like to introduce my good friend and colleague, Dr. Jesus Soriano from the National Science Foundation. As you will see from description of Jesus in their booklet, he has all three terminal degrees. Is from three fantastic universities in three different countries. Jesus had his medical doctor degree from University of Alicante in Spain, then his PhD in medical sciences from University of Geneva, and then MBA from Johns Hopkins Business School in the United States. Jesus is now program director at the NSF for their Partnership for Innovation program. Great program. I'm myself a former participant in that effort, terrific program. And prior to that, he served as SBIR, STTR director, and was responsible for biomedical and smart health technologies. He's done it since 2012. And prior to that, he was senior advisor to Puerto Rico Science, Technology and Research Trust, and was an executive with several biotech companies, some larger than others, including those that were spun off from university research. So without further ado, Jesus, take it away.
Thank you, Eugene. Thank you very much for the introduction. Thanks to you, Stephanie and Ariane, for inviting me. I know how much hard work has gone into this event, and I must apologize for the changing schedule, for which I'm entirely responsible. I believe my colleagues have created excessive expectations. Most likely, I'll be putting you to sleep over the next hour. If you decide to sleep, please turn off your video and your microphone. Thank you. Okay, so we are going to start presenting you two programs, the SBIR STTR program at NSF, what we call America's Seed Fund at NSF. And then we'll go a little bit back in time, or back in the timeline of innovation, to present to you a pre-SBIR STTR program called Partnerships for Innovation, which has been around for 20 years, but is a little unknown jewel at NSF. So if I may go to the next slide, please. The NSF SBIR STTR program was created many years ago, around the late 1970s. At a time where the small businesses were trying to get, I would say, attention from the federal government on the role in the research enterprise. One of the first awards at the time were around $25,000. I happened to see once the list of the first round of awards. One of those was a little company called Qualcomm. Since then, we have funded thousands of companies, and I'll show you some little data. But the bottom line, what we did at the time and we continue to do is really focus on moving the needle in creating societal impact through the commercialization of high-risk, high-impact technologies. Really groundbreaking. Okay, so the overall mission of our SBIR STTR program is aligned with the mission of NSF, basically transforming scientific discovery into societal benefit. That actually is as old as the 1948, around when Vannevar Bush published a little booklet for the president, which led then to the creation of NSF. So some of these words here actually come from them, and for good or for bad, they are still relevant and needed. Okay, so but we do have an obsession in our program is we want commercialization outputs. So we are not a place where you come just for a grant because you have nothing better to do. Okay, so why don't we move to the next slide? I just plan to give you a very high level of vision of what we are doing. I am not going to digest everything for you because I need you to go to our website, seedfund.nsf.gov, and do your homework. Okay, so we have more than $200 million that we're giving to small businesses. Actually, as of 2020, we were at 221 million. We expect that money to increase. We'll see about that. But the good news for you and your company is that you can get $2 million per project, $2 million. And I'll tell you in a little bit how you can do that. If we could go to the next slide. Everybody's welcome at NSF. Everybody who qualifies as a SBIR, STTR eligible small business, because we fund basically all disciplines in science and engineering that are normally funded by NSF. Actually, we're also, recently we partnered with NASA and started collaborating in issues related to space. So when you look at this, the first thing is do not discourage yourself, because don't get discouraged, because I know this has been organized by with the auspices of NHLBI, and most of you may be in life sciences. Well, the good news is that basically 1/3 of our funding, unbeknownst to most people, go to life sciences. The importance is to determine what type of technology comes to us, and when should you be applying to NIH, when should you be applying to NSF. And my advice to you is come to us as early as possible, because we really focus on core platforms, things that actually the investors do not care much about. They want products and solutions where they can make money very fast. You come to NSF when an investor in their right mind would not approach you with a 10-foot pole. Okay. When I was program director in SBIR, STTR, I have the honor actually to consolidate all what we were doing in biomedical and created the biomedical and then digital health portions of the program. Now these have grown significantly, as you have seen, you can see from that pie. And actually we have 3 or 4 program directors doing everything from diagnostics to pharmaceutical sciences. But the question is, when do you come to us? And the answer is, come really early stage, when you have to solve fundamental issues like engineering issues, chemistry, physics. How is this, what is the chemistry, for example, for a diagnostic? Don't come to us, for instance, if you have already your platform and you just want to do another application. That would be more appropriate maybe for NIH or another agency, okay? When I was program director at the time in SBIR, I mean, I had great satisfaction. I got many companies started and many of them got lots and lots of money from NIH. So I'm not saying come first to NSF and later to NIH, but think about what your product development strategy is. What are your critical needs at the time? Certain things may be too early for NIH, right? Because it may not help them advance their mission, the critical mission of addressing health issues. So those things maybe should come to us. But I'll tell you also a little trick on how to learn whether you fit our program or not, okay? I'll show you as well. Actually, I don't have it here, but when you go to our website, seedfund.nsf.gov, you're gonna click on portfolio, and there you have all the areas with each program director who manages it. And you will see all what we do in life sciences or really early stage biomedical, from digital health, diagnostics, pharmaceutical sciences, you name it. Okay, so if we could move to the next slide. Another reason, if you are scared and it's the first time that you create a company or you don't even know how to go about it, another reason to come to NSF is that more than half of our companies, actually the vast majority of our companies come from just not the companies, the awardees actually, are first-time applicants. Folks who have never received money from NSF and oftentimes from anywhere in the government. We have developed over the years a methodology that allows us to take a lot of risk. So most of our companies have 3 people, 2 people. Sometimes it's a professor and a postdoc, or an entrepreneur and a faculty, etc., or just small businesses from the street. But we know how to take risk, how to evaluate risk, and if I can go to the next slide. Look at this. The vast majority of our awards, that was 2020, but it has been the same for many years, were awarded to startups with less than 10 employees. So obviously, under the law, any small business who is SBIR STTR eligible can apply to NSF. Although under our authority, the ownership cannot be in the hands of venture capital or let's say private equity groups. It is an exception that we have. The ownership has to be still at least 51% in the hands of US nationals. So 95% of our companies less than 10 employees. And what do we do with that? If we go to the next slide. Not only those companies have less than 10 employees, but they're really tiny. They just started in the last 5 years. And sometimes, very often, the first money they get to get started comes from NSF. So yet another reason to look at us. I'm not trying to get business out of my dear colleagues at NIH, but look at us because we may be of help to you. And if we move to the next slide. Another reason why you should come to us, again, not trying to take business from our colleagues, is that only since 2012, we've awarded 3,400 small businesses. We are not the biggest SBIR STTR program in the government by any means. We are actually a fraction of NIH. But if you look at the second paragraph, it's pretty cool. Since 2015, 9.1 billion in follow-on institutional equity financing. So we're talking about private money, not government money. 9.1 billion. Actually, if you check the news, this number now is totally obsolete, because very recently, Ginkgo Bioworks, a company that we started the same thing, professor and student from my university, just did a public exit of 15 billion. And the company is relatively young. So we are, that's what you could, if you want to dream, this is what you could achieve if you are successful applying and joining our program. Okay, so in that period as well, more than 153 successful exits in the way of acquisitions, mergers, and IPOs. So what do you learn from this? That, yeah, we want high risk, high impact technologies with potential for commercialization. We are not in the business of funding technologies that do not have societal impact. That is very important. But we are absolutely obsessed with your commercialization success. So don't come to us if you're if you think that the next step after, let's say, completing a SBIR phase 1, phase 2, phase 2B with us would be get another grant. Okay. Thank you. Let's move to the next slide. So let's go very quickly on how this works. I'm going to show you basically 2 steps. In the next slide, this is how our program looks like from very high up. Again, I am just giving you a teaser. I was not planning to give you a lecture. I know I put people to sleep, but I didn't feel like putting you to sleep today. You start with a phase one, feasibility research towards proof of concept. It's a concept of a product or a service. It's not a scientific proof of principle, okay? Which means that the quality of the preliminary data that you come with is critical. It's true, we are in the business of helping startups and small businesses, but and that we talk a lot about commercialization and we created ICOR, etc. But do not get misguided. We are still funding research and development on high risk technologies. Okay, so that feasibility research, you come with preliminary data as much as you have, and then present a compelling argument of why in a process of 6 to 12, 18 months, you could move to phase two, where you will receive, you compete again, obviously, you will receive $1 million. And that's where you really start honing on your prototype. This phase two normally has two portions, a commercialization portion, 15 pages, a technical portion, another 15 pages, where there you really have to prove yourself. Okay, we take a lot of risk in phase one. Phase two is a much more serious matter, but lots of companies succeed. We have very good rates in the transition from phase one to phase two. The good thing as well is that we have a whole series of supplements where we can help you with additional funding in your partnership efforts, in your patenting costs. If you want to hire undergrads, teachers, if you want to partner with HBCUs or minority institutions, etc., etc. Okay, so please look at our website. I hope that you will feel enticed to participate. Some more good news. Some years back, we created the Phase 2B program. Basically, what we're doing is, if you are able, thanks to your NSF-funded technology, if during that period since we started funding you, you're able to raise money, commercial money, either licenses, investment, or sales, we will match that 50 cents on the dollar, and we will give you up to $500,000. So normally that comes with another, first you are invited, we review your financial package, we interview as well your investor or your key licensee or partner, basically from whom the money comes or has come. We actually match real money. So it's not a promise of funds, that's very important. So you need to get really, as soon as you get your phase one, you have to start very aggressively, delivering on that phase one because it's a rat race. And second, start raising money as soon as you can. Okay, so let's move to the next one. And now, how do you get started after all this talking? Well, there is a project pitch, as the next slide is going to show. We started this project pitch around 3 years ago because many people applied, and applying to NSF is really difficult, right? You have to learn the fast lane system and how to write a solicitation. And we do not speak in the same way that NIH or other agencies. So if you are more of an NIH person, sometimes it's very frustrating. You apply to us and then, the proposal didn't get funded, although you are absolutely amazing scientist or engineer or entrepreneur. So that's why we put a project pitch where we give you already some advice. And most importantly, we are screening proposals for fit, because this is open to all businesses. Sometimes people want to do like a pizzeria, like a, beauty parlor, these type of things, and they still have to do a pitch. That's where we save them time by accepting them or not. So it's not a review process, it's a fitness process. That's very important, okay? So how does it work? Let's look at the next slide. The project pitch is basically a two-pager. You will go to a little website. You're going to discover that on our website. And you are going to tell us 4 things. First, what is your technological innovation, right? That high-risk, high-impact technology that is supposed to address an amazing problem in society. How are you going to address that problem in society? So you're going to have challenges to address. Otherwise, you will be selling the technology already in the form of products or services, right? So what challenges do you need to address? And you will be very systematic and tell us what objectives, in general, not too much detail, but what objectives on a technical level you need to address to then put that technology innovation into practice to Now, next section, market opportunity. That's where you tell us how the money will come. Basically, what problem in society are you trying to address through commercialization? Okay, so important not to forget, we have a societal impact mission here. So you're just not gonna say, oh, I'm gonna make lots of money. We need to know, but we know this, our philosophy is almost neoliberal, if I may use the term, and I hope not to offend anyone. Why? Because we want the private sector to take over as soon as possible. So there is the technology for you, but we want the private sector to take over, which means that you need to find a way to address that societal problem in the case of NIH or NIH related issues. It would be, let's say, a disease, but it has to be through commercialization. Okay, that is very important, and it's that mindset that oftentimes makes you fail or succeed in our program. And finally, the last little section in that pitch is company and team. Define who you are. It's okay if you're small. It's okay if you're starting. We just need to know who you are and that you're starting on the right footing. In the next slide, basically, if we go to the next slide, thank you. Basically, you can submit anytime. We will let you know quickly within a month or so if your program is a fit. If your pitch is a fit for the program. The vast majority are a good fit. Do not get too scared, but please take this exercise seriously, because those 4 points that I just show you are actually the pillars of a good SBIR proposal. Okay, now just submit one pitch at a time, please. Do not pitch us too many times. The good news is that, as I said, 1 month, it will take us more or less, and then to review it, and then you can submit a proposal. You get invited. You cannot fake this, because when you submit a proposal, we will give you a number with the approval, and we will link your pitch approval to the proposal. Okay, so yes, there is an invitation process now, but the good news is that if you do not get accepted in the pitch, we are going to give you feedback, and you will be able to resubmit. And then the submission of proposals at NSF now is almost continuous. It's every 3 months we have a deadline, so it is pretty cool. If we can go to the next slide. I'm checking that I do not speak too long. So once you submit your project pitch, what happens? Let's go to the next. So hopefully, most likely, you will be invited to submit a proposal. Okay. If you do not get invited, we will give you feedback. Why are you not invited, right? If you think that our feedback is outrageous, you should contact the program director and have a discussion. You're entitled to it. But if not, take the advice that we've given you, and you can apply in the next window, which would be like 3 months later. Next slide. So again, this was just a teaser. This is the website where you should get started. You have there a generic email address that we monitor, actually, sbir@nsf.gov. You can also talk to our program directors. When you go in that website, you click on portfolio, you have every technology possible, and the program director managing every family of topics. Okay, you can also follow us on social media. There are lots of cool stories that we've been sharing. There was something else I wanted to tell you, which is that I may come as a surprise, as a mole on your face, because this is NSF and you guys are NIHs people. But be strategic, be smart. Even though you may be pursuing a life science application, there is a space for you at NSF, so long you focus on the really, really early stage core technology platform. And B, it's possible that your technology has other uses that are even outside life sciences, and you should explore them, and you're also welcome to apply. What we request is that if you apply to more than one agency, you must disclose it. Don't play it cool by applying to different agencies and not telling those agencies, because if for some reason you have submitted the same proposal and you get funded, it's illegal to get duplicated funding, and it is really very illegal and very bad. You should never do that, okay? So with that, don't get discouraged again. Let's move on to what happens when you are not even ready for a startup. Well, if you're not ready for a startup, if you are just in academia, maybe you want to go licensing, you don't want to create a company, we have a solution for you. So long, either you have had previous funding from NSF, or you have done the ICOR program, or you partner with somebody who has done it. Okay, so this is called Partnerships for Innovation. It's the program that I was honored to be given the opportunity to manage already 3 years ago. Let's go to the next slide. This slide is almost like 30 years old, but I love it. It shows some of the programs in our innovation ecosystem that we offer. And PFI, Partnerships for Innovation, is kind of in the middle. ICORs could be before PFI, it could be after. If you have not done ICOR before you get awarded by PFI, we will pay for it. We will oblige you actually to do it as a condition for award. We have also a fantastic supplement intern where we send your graduate students, so long you have an NSF grant of any type, of any directorate or program at NSF, we will send your students with $55,000 to do a non-academic internship. So anywhere except another university. In our division, obviously, we favor corporations. I will not go into detail. Please do your homework. Some of you, or most of you, may qualify for any of these programs. The link to our division is below. Next slide. So NSF keeps on inventing programs, right? We invented ICOR, we invented Intern, we invented GOLI, SBIR, but we also invented PFI, and that's not as known. But Congress liked it. So since 2011, and then again in 2017, actually became first we invited it, but then it became an obligation because Congress gave us a mandate to the American Innovation and Competitiveness Act. And basically they tell you, NSF, must increase the impact, the societal impact of the fundamental research you do by accelerating the translation of research into societal impact through products and services via partnerships with industry, the private sector, etc. Right? They also ask us to promote the creation of innovation ecosystems at the academic level, train faculty and students in innovation and entrepreneurship, and then increase diversity, equity, and inclusion in innovation. So PFI has had several iterations over the years. This is the current one. The program has only one objective, and we fund applied research towards proof of concept, towards commercialization. So you could say it's the same word than SBIR, STTR, but you do it from the comfort of your academic or not-for-profit lab. Companies for profit organizations are not eligible. But many of you are either willing to partner with a university or working at a university or not-for-profit. So strongly encourage you for you to look at. Okay, so this is, let's say, prototyping work. 2 flavors, $250,000 for up to 2 years. It's a self-contained project. You just do it with yourself, students, and we want an industrial mentor. We call it a technology commercialization expert. He's a business advisor. Now, if you want more money, you need to come with an industrial partner, a corporation who demonstrates a strategic interest in the commercial exploitation of your technology. So it's not somebody who just gives you a letter, okay? And if you want to have $1 million project, it's the same type of technology development, but it has to be multidisciplinary. If you just bring one industrial partner, it's enough. Sometimes you may bring more, or a research partner as well. Okay, let's move to the next slide. I don't want to take too much of your time. At the end of the day, PFI can lead you to SBIR, STTR, whether it's SBIR, STTR at NSF or any other agency. We know it's working because the rate of startup creation in the program, I've measured it very informally, is more than 35%, and that's pretty cool. And the number of PFI-enabled SBIR or startups that then get funded by SBIR, STTR, at least at NSF, is increasing, is skyrocketing, and I am extremely proud of it. Because this program, although it's for academics and not-for-profits, is as serious about future commercialization as the SBIR is, except that we do not force you to create a business. We force you to start thinking about what should you be doing to commercialize, right? So what we want at the end of the day here is commercialization of the intellectual property generated from NSF-funded research. If you have been only funded by NIH, then you would not qualify, but you may find somebody who has been funded by NSF with whom you could partner. Or you could just get the NSF I-Core program funded by NSF. Again, one way of doing it is if you have been on an I-Core site or node, normally they will sponsor you to go to the I-Core program, okay? So that commercialization should happen in the form of licenses, either to startups or to larger corporations. We want you to work with industry. And as I said before, we want to move the needle on creating generation of new leaders, young leaders in innovation, the future heads of startup companies or small businesses or large corporations, and then increasing diversity. Let's move on to the next slide. So this is the kicker. Everybody loves PFI. Oh my God, I can do startup work within my lab without having to create a company. But there are lots of requirements. It's not that easy, okay? You need to have been funded by NSF. And your project, any project, except for 5 types, you can look at that in our website, could be current or have ended over the last 7 years, which is, I mean, quite a lot, because after 7 years, if you still have like 5 to 7 years of development, there's not much patent life left for you. So we said that 7 years would be enough. If you don't have NSF-funded research, you may have been funded by I-Core. Again, the way to arrive to I-Core is either you have, again, NSF-funded research, or you came through an I-Core site, I-Core node, and you were sponsored. So NSF would give you an I-Core Teams Award. An I-Core Teams Award is an actual NSF grant. It comes with $50,000. Okay, go to that website I'm showing you, and you will learn a little bit more how to do this. Let's move to the next slide. And you can click here actually 4 times until we complete the slide. Stephanie, if you would be so kind. So basically, eligible organizations are academic research institutions, classic institutions of higher education. It could be 2 4-year colleges. It could be community colleges, which is pretty cool because most community colleges don't have a source of funding for innovation, right? They have to be in the States. Obviously, they have to be accredited here and working here. Public or not-for-profit institutions which work in tech transfer. And what does it mean work in tech transfer? Well, there's the good news, I guess, is that Congress, when they wrote the law, didn't define technology transfer. So if you are a public or non-profit, non-academic organization that works in tech transfer, you qualify yourself, okay? So that is something that the public may not be using as often as they should. We would like to see more submissions from those type of organizations. The next will be just a simple nonprofit with no tech transfer, no nothing, but they actually partner with an institution of higher education. And then to make things even easier, in the next point, a consortium of any of the above. So pretty cool. Although there are all these requirements for lineage, etc., it is easy for organizations to partner together and propose to NSF. And we did that way because well, Congress told us to do it, first and foremost, and then because we are called partnerships for innovation. These projects function better when people work together. Next slide. When you think quickly about what a PFI is, it's really an embryo of a future SBIR or STTR proposal. And that's how we restructured the program back in 2019. It has a component of technology development, the demonstration of commercial potential. We want partnerships. We want education and leadership development in innovation for students and faculty, and we want diversity and inclusion. And when you go to that little website, you will have access to the solicitation where all those things are explained in a lot of detail. There's also a recorded webinar. You have FAQs, all kinds of stuff that can help you determine whether there is fit and whether you should apply. We are also running webinars now every other week until July 14th, which is our next deadline. Next slide. No, I think that was the previous one. I wonder if we're going backwards. There, Fantastic, thank you. So there are limits on proposals, how many proposals can be submitted. Basically, an organization can submit as many TT, so the little one for 250,000, PFI TT, as many as they want for deadline. However, for the RP, in the beginning, we saw a bit of cacophony, so we decided to limit the RPs to one per institution or per campus on multi-campus institutions per deadline. So normally, these campuses or the organizations have run like a internal selection process. Hopefully, that process selects the best project, and then you submit. Okay. When it comes to PR or co-PI, you can submit two, either two TTs or a TT or an RP, PFI TT, PFI RP. I mean, normally we never find two for the same PI. Some people insist on submitting two. My advice would be focus on quality and not on quantity. Okay. And then normally we tend to give, for sure, we give just one award per PI. Sometimes somebody could have a tiny role as co-PI in a project and then BPI on another, and normally around 2 hours per organization. But that is the 2 hours per organization is kind of a goal. Is sometimes we get more depending on how much money we have and the quality of the proposals. Next slide. Now, this is very important. What we do not fund. Our job was to get technologies out of the lab towards the marketplace. I don't say to the marketplace or in the marketplace or in the market, because that should be SBIR. That's why we use the word towards. But what we do not fund is basic science of any type. We are obsessed. We only fund technology development. And that is not as easy as it seems, because when people submit a proposal, they like with the SBIR, frankly, they come to NSF, submit a proposal. If they come from academia, especially, they stay in their comfort zone, which is, I'm going to write about science because that's what I like. And unfortunately, very important professors with decades of NSF funding, they get declined, and then I receive these horrendous emails and people complain, and my job is so difficult. But sorry, we only fund technology development. Now, for those of you who are in the orbit of NIH, you need to know that, like for SBIR, STTR, we fund all those life sciences, biomedical topics, digital health topics, etc., that you will see in SBIR. But there we draw a line. We draw a line on preclinical or clinical, for sure on clinical work. We don't fund clinical work, and we don't fund preclinical work when it is for regulatory purposes. Okay, we do not fund drug development. We do not fund regulatory work. If you are at the stage where you're ready for an IND, no, we are. That's more NIH. Okay, so be very. If you have doubts, just send us an email. Although we get obsessed about, hey, we want you to move towards commercialization, the reality is we are still NSF and we only fund R&D. So not market research, except that we pay for ICOR, corporate business development, sales fundraising, and intellectual property. Well, respect with intellectual property, we just launched our new baby. It's called Apex, Accelerate Allowable Patent Expenses. If you are funded by NSF in the PFI program, we will give you up to $50,000 after the award is a supplement for your patent expenses. Can you imagine? PCT, so long as paid in the United States, to USPTO, disclosure, work at the tech transfer office, work by law firms, etc. So soon we'll be removing that intellectual property sentence from there. At this time, it stays there because it comes as a supplement once and if you get awarded by us. So yet another reason to check us out. We do not fund like our sister program, commercial development, low risk stuff, incremental work, boring stuff. We want really to move the needle, really Star Trek type of technology. Okay, let's move to the next slide. We already spoke a little bit about the 2 tracks. So there's small one, $250,000 for up to 2 years. Again, commercial potential demonstration projects, has to be funded by NSF at the very early stage, at least up to 7 years ago, in any field in science and engineering, research and education. Okay, something that people don't know is that we need you to come with like the industrial mentor of in ICOR, we call it technology commercialization expert. We're gonna, it's basically a business advisor, somebody who knows your target field of application or the industry sector. The ideal person could be a retired executive from the sector you're targeting. But if you don't find that person, it's okay. You know, a technology transfer officer in your university or campus, if that person is savvy and experienced, would also do a great job. Sometimes it's a consultant, etc. And then we want letters of support that give you some little validation, support from folks who are not your partners yet, but who could buy your technology, partner with you, etc. in the future. And let's move on to the next slide. We already spoke about the PFIRP, bigger money for 3 years, same goals, but it has to be multi-organizational, interdisciplinary, and for sure, we need an industrial partner. That is very important. If you cannot just come and say, hey, my startup is my industrial partner, my neighbor is my industrial partner. No, it has to be a real company, a company with sales revenues, okay? And that company has to be involved in your project and involved in the educational objectives of this program, which is basically mentoring your student and faculty as well. And the next slide. Okay, we here, because I think the team is going to share with you the slides. I don't want to go into too much detail. We may have time for a few questions. Basically, quick word on the industrial partner. The industrial partner is just not somebody who gives you a letter of support, somebody who really demonstrates strategic interest in the commercial future of your technology. It's very important. And we want those companies to be sustainable because it's more like open innovation, right? You create your startup, but if you go for the RP, it's more like you're working with a significant company who will help you and then also take the technology forward, okay? So we want that experience in bringing products to market and actually selling them. Many people come with a startup, and startup, yeah, has experience in developing products, but oftentimes they are not sustainable, they implode, they don't have the wherewithal that we need for this program. But in the next slide, we say that in any way, okay, not in this slide, it's okay. What I'm trying to say is that SBIR, STTR eligible companies are actually can serve as industrial partners, but please don't use it as a source of funding. Although you are eligible for a sub-award, the money for PFI should stay, most of it, in the academic or nonprofit. Don't use PFI just to fund startups because that's not the goal. Although you are entitled to some sub-award, okay? Check the solicitation, which is the RFP, if you want, and to learn a bit more. Okay, so partnerships, we want them, okay? That's what the program is about, and they have to be catalytic. If you can do the work by yourself without a partner, that partnership is not worth the taxpayer dollars that you're asking for, okay? So to which extent that partnership catalyzes and accelerates the technology development is critical, okay? Next slide. We learned some time ago that these translational research programs that occur in academia fail because of the normal turnaround of students and postdocs who have to go once they finish, right? And because PIs are busy writing grants and teaching, etc., etc. So what we try to do is really support this concept of mandating that the students and postdocs spend time. So we mandate at least 100% of the master's or PhD's research time and at least 50% of the postdoc non-teaching time. We expect that systematic learning plan in terms of innovation and leadership development, and we expect the industrial partner or business advisor to get involved in that mentorship. Is making a big difference as we see. In exchange, we'll pay for tuition, we'll pay for additional expenses for the student, and then through ICOR, intern, goalie supplements, I hope that you memorize those, intern, goalie, ICOR. Through all those supplements, we will provide additional funding for the students. So actually a student could do their master's, their PhD, sometimes PhD and postdoc within this project and become a true entrepreneur before they submit their SBIR. Actually, I encourage preparation of an SBIR, creation of a company and SBIR submission before this project, this PFI project ends. So we can address your life needs, right? Like, hey, do you have a salary? Can you live? Can you pay your rent and your health insurance while you are engaging in this? That's why this PFI program is unknown, not as known as it should, but it's so important and helpful. And let's go to the next. Okay, so at this time we are 2 program directors. Katie Bradley is a rotator working on detail from Iowa State University. She's also a program director in SBIR, so she's a great contact. And then Jesus here, both of us to help you. You can write to both our emails or just use the PFI at nsf.gov because we both check that email and you may get a faster response. With that, I don't know, Stephanie, we have time for questions or how you want to do it. Thank you. Thank you so much. I hope I didn't put you to sleep.
Jesus, it does look like we have a question that has come in through our chat here, asking, does being supported by NSF Advanced Program count as NSF lineage for the PFI?
Absolutely, yes. There are only 5 programs or so who do not count. One is SBIR, because we are a pre-SBIR program. The other is the GRFP fellowship. So at this time, any other fellowship except GRFP counts. The other is PFI itself. If you got a PFI, we want you to move on, right? So you cannot use PFI as lineage. And then the other is ICOR, but at the site or the node level. Besides that, all the, let's say, 11 to 12,000 projects that NSF funds every year qualify. So lots of opportunities for many people. F-score grants qualify, all kinds of stuff.
Great.
There's no excuse not to apply. That's the bottom line.
We had another question come in and they're asking, are the reviewers of NSF also working for NIH study sections?
Well, we have no idea because we don't ask. But a panel at NSF is something that the program director puts together. They come, they review a few proposals, and they go. When we create another panel, it's a different type of people. So it's not a standing committee that decides what's coming to the program. On the other side, not only the program director is putting that panel, and that panel comes and goes. Every time is different. But the role of the panel is advisory. The program director makes the recommendation for award or for funding. So if you want to blame somebody, don't blame the panel, blame the program director if you don't get the money.
Great. We have time for a few more questions. If anybody else from the attendee side wants to drop a question in the chat box or in the question and answer box, rather, I can go ahead and keep reading those out.
I would encourage you not to be shy, ask some questions because we're extremely busy. Some of you are going to be sending emails or requesting meetings, etc. Now is your time. We are extremely busy, especially this part of the time, this time of the year, forgive me. And those of you who have been asking meetings through Calendly, what I've been doing is giving you yet another link, and I'll be talking to you over the next 10 days. At least some of you have already scheduled you for next week or the following. If you haven't received that email, then you can write to me if I haven't got back to you. So I guess I really put people to sleep today. Sorry about that.
Or I think it was rather, I think you were so thorough in your presentation, Jesus, that people must not have questions.
Maybe.
All right. Well, it looks like, check our time here. Stephanie, did you have a question you wanted to ask?
Nothing really right now, Jesus. That was such a thorough presentation. I think you answered all the questions I had in my head. So fantastic job.
Thank you for the invitation and for your flexibility. And I look forward to collaborating with you guys again. Thank you.
Well, we loved having you. And you know what? Do not worry about the flexibility. As we have all learned in this past 15 months, sometimes unexpected things happen and you need to learn how to be flexible. And that's actually, that's a great piece of advice for any academic innovator who wants to be an entrepreneur. Be flexible and, things will work out. Just sometimes you need to learn to adjust to the unexpected.
Yeah. And we had one more question that just came in. If you could just repeat the information about the NSF event next week.
Okay, well, I guess I said two things. One, we are both the SBIR, the ICOR, IPFI run webinars, Q&A webinars on a regular basis. So check out our websites. What I said as well is that some of you have requested appointments for me today. What I'm doing is I'm reaching out to you. I'm giving you another link where you can choose an appointment with me for next week or the following. But for that, you need first to apply through the Calendly, please, if you don't mind. It's just that we are extremely busy. But I'm just clearing my agenda these 2 days, but then I'll be available to you next week or the following. You have my word.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jesus. Well, with that, I think we will go ahead and wrap up our conference. Again, I just want to give my most deepest appreciation for everyone who helped plan this conference. Stephanie, Davis, Eugene, Amy, Ann, and Priscilla. It was such a pleasure working with you all. And I really hope that everybody who was able to attend the conference really thought that this was a valuable use of your 2 days. I know we can all get bogged down with Zoom webinars and Zoom conferences, but I know I personally think that this was a great conference and really had just tremendous amounts of information. So we will be sending out links to the recording as well as the PDF version of the PowerPoint slides. You are welcome to email us questions. If it's not a question we can answer, we sure will try to connect you with the best person possible. Again, thank you so much to all of the presenters that came over the last 2 days to share information about their institutes and their programs, as well as all of the panelists that we heard from earlier today to share kind of their stories about being awarded SBIR and STTR grants. And so with that, I think we will go ahead and close. Thank you all so much again for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
A great event, and thank you for organizing it, and thank you for letting us be a part of this.
Thank you.
My pleasure.